lot of these specimens, for example, are cyborgs, half human, half animal. A man who can walk through walls, another who can eat glass, and a woman with 3 breasts. That's just a few, that's just a small, I don't know where I come up with this stuff, but it comes from somewhere. So Phoenix is an accelerated organism, which means that she's 1 year old, but she looks like she's 40. And now the story starts when something happens. First of all, she starts heating up, and think about it, she's near 40, and she's a phoenix, so you can see where this is going. So she's this weapon that's been created. Now, and also a little bit more, they call all of the scientists, the doctors, and the nurses, and the staff, and the soldiers in the building with a big eye. So that's kind of the setting of it. And so Phoenix, the story begins when you have all this science fiction stuff, right? You have all of this setup, but the story only begins with love. It's when the man that she loves, who is capable of eating glass, and basically he can consume all the things that would be left behind if something were to happen to the world. If a nuclear holocaust were to happen, he can eat it and he can survive on it. But in the trade-off of that is that he can't eat normal food. So the story begins when, and all these people are in this building, they have never left. Phoenix has never left this building. She's never been outside. She doesn't know what outside is. She sees it through her window, and that's her only idea of the outside world. And one day, this man, Saeed, who is also one of the specimens in this tower, he takes one of her apples and he takes it to her room. And then he eats it and he dies. And so there's this whole, she sees this and she's thrown into complete turmoil because someone that she loved, this man that she is deeply in love with, kills himself. And so that is a catalyst for her to start seeking her own freedom. She figures, if he leaves, if he doesn't want to be here, then she doesn't want to be here. So that's the first time where she actually considers going outside and seeking her freedom. And when she seeks her freedom, and eventually when she seeks her freedom, that need to get out becomes a need for revenge for the death of her lover. And then that need for revenge for the death of her lover turns into a need for revenge for those who are like her. All the people that are in Tower 7. And mind you, this is set in the near future. So once again, the catalyst and the center and the focus of the story really is love, even though it is a science fiction story, and much of science fiction tends to be plot driven as opposed to character driven. And this is from a different perspective. What I discussed in my interview, however, was my novel, Who Fears Death, which is my third novel. And Who Fears Death is special to me for many reasons. Once again, it's science fiction, fantasy, kind of combined together, and it deals with a lot of really tough, difficult issues. The main character, for example, she is a product of what I call Sudanese, John Joweed style, weaponized rape, if that even makes sense. It does. It's a real thing. The catalyst for writing her character was after reading the Washington Post article where they discussed weaponized rape. Weaponized rape is when one group of people seeks to annihilate another group of people by raping the women and impregnating them with their own. And so within an African or Middle Eastern culture, the child is considered, in general, I'm speaking of Africa in general, I'm fully aware of that, it's a big place. The child is considered the child of the man. So these men who are going and doing that and producing children in this way are destroying families from the inside. So when I read this in the Washington Post, this was happening in Sudan, I saw it as the most evil, ingenious form of genetic warfare. So that was the catalyst for my main character in Who Fears Death. She ends up going across the desert. So Who Fears Death is set in the future. The main character, Onya Somu, ends up crossing the desert in pursuit of revenge against her father. The story deals with female circumcision, child soldiers, genocide, and of course death. But for me, when I wrote this novel was very, very difficult to write because it draws on a lot of historical and cultural things that are from my own culture. I'm Nigerian. I've always seen Who Fears Death as a love story, which is kind of interesting because it deals with all of these heavy issues. But story, Oniso's companion, Muta. Okay, Oniso is a half-caste, so she's a product of one man from one group of people raping a woman from another group of people, and she's a product of that. And so she's an outcast in many ways, completely actually. She's an outcast within both groups of people. She's not accepted within either group. Her mother takes her to live with her own people, and so she's treated basically like an untouchable within that group of people. Okay, so in the story, Oniso, her companion, also is like that. So he comes from where she came from, a union of violence. Oniso Muita comes from a union of love. Okay, so they're from two different. They're both outcasts and they're both half castes, but they're two different types. And so both of them go on to have magical abilities, and Muita has his own story. Their love is so strong, however, that the fear of whether they'll stay together or not is not even a conflict in the story. It is assumed. It is consistent. And Oniso is very, very powerful, but she loves him and she needs him. I wanted to portray a main character, a powerful female main character who is capable of loving and surrendering and submitting to that love at the same time. Pursuing her goal, and he ends up going with her, and he pursues his own goal too. This was important to me because I wanted to. It's my vision of what I consider to be African love. Jupiter's Death is not a romance. This is an epic story of Nigerian sorcery, cultural conflicts, and technology. And the story. But the story would not happen without this strong love, and that love fuels the story. As a storyteller, I've always believed that without a love story, there is no story, whether you're writing science fiction or whether you're writing literary mainstream fiction, there is no story without a love story. I'm not saying that everything needs to be romance. No. I'm saying that love is something that I think drives a story, or that makes a story, that adds importance to a story. Nevertheless, the love that I'm most interested in and most interested in writing about is African love, and I believe that this is a type of love that is wrapped in conflict, it's wrapped, conflicted, and bonded with customs, traditions, and culture. And this is something that I wanted to write about. And the reason is because I look at my own family and I see this. I never saw my parents kiss. I can say from all my life, I never saw my parents kiss once. I'm sure that they did. And I have 3 siblings, so there's 4 of us, so yeah, I'm pretty sure that they did. But the showing of affection, especially kissing, was not something that was accepted around children. At least that was my own experience of my parents and the Nigerians of their generation. Yet and still, at the very end of my father's life, he passed in 2004, when he was very sick with Parkinson's and congestive heart failure. The irony is my father was a heart surgeon, so shaking hands and congestive heart failure. That was also a big catalyst for Who Fears Death. But when he was at his sickest, when he was being flown in a helicopter from the suburbs to the University of Chicago hospital, a paramedic saw my mother with him and kind of observed them together, and he started crying. And I remember my sister asked him why was he crying, and he said that it was because he had never seen such powerful love between husband and wife, never in his life. And so these are the parents whom I never saw kiss. And this man could take one look at them and he could see what existed between them. I wanted to capture this complexity in my stories. One of the most obvious examples in my story, in Who Fears Death, about me trying to, grasp this concept, this African concept, Nigerian concept, whatever you want to call it, was the concept of Ifunanya in Who Fears Death. snippet, like 2 paragraphs, where the concept is illustrated. The part that I'm going to read this is when Omi Songo decides to seek revenge against her father, and she's crossing the desert with her group of friends to do that. They've hit the road, in other words. It's a very hero's journey-esque story. They just left a town where the men there viewed half-caste women like Omi Songo as prostitutes. And when she refuses to service them, they attempted to rape her, and she escaped, but not without emotional scarring. And this is what her lover Muta says to lift her up. And this is in first person, this is in Omi Songo's voice. I opened my mouth and inhaled his breath. He kissed me again, and quietly, carefully, and softly, he spoke the words that few women ever hear from a man, Ifunanya. They're ancient words. They don't exist amongst any other group of people. There is no direct translation in Nuru, English, Sipo, or Va. This word only has meaning when spoken by a man to one he loves. A woman can't use the word unless she's barren. It is not juju, not in the way that I know it, but the word has strength. It's wholly binding in its truth, and the emotion reciprocated. And if it is true, and it is wholly binding if it is true, and the emotion is reciprocated. This is not the word love. A man can tell a woman he loves her every day. Ifunanya is spoken only once in a man's life. Ifu means to look into, na means the, and anya means eyes. The eyes are the window to the soul. So this word is an actual word. Ifunanya is an Igbo word. Both of my parents are Igbo, so I'm Igbo. And it means to look into the eyes. It is a word that is used, the word for love. When someone asks, what is the Igbo word for love? People will say Ifunanya. But there is no word for the more Western concept of love. There is no word in the Igbo language for love. You know, that thing that exists between two people when they fall in love, that idea of falling in love and then getting married. That doesn't exist in the Igbo language. Ifunanya is a word that is how would I describe it? It doesn't mean to be in love. It means to look into the eyes. And it comes from the concept of, in traditional Igbo culture, couples they didn't meet to fall in love and then get married. The marriages were arranged. And oftentimes, the two people didn't know each other, and when they were married, that would be the first time that they're meeting. And so when couples came together and were married, they were not necessarily in love. The love would develop over time as they got to know each other, went through trials and tribulations together, and et cetera, and had children, et cetera. So eventually so Ifunanya is referring to that kind of love, a love that grows over time as opposed to something that you feel due to physical or chemistry or whatever people, the way people do, what the Western idea of love. So I wanted to really portray that with this idea. And so in Who Fears Death, Ifunanya, I took the idea of Ifunanya and I tweaked it. I gave it more of a science fiction. I added magic to it, first of all. Not as she says, not magic from like in the juju sense that most people are referring to. It's something that can only be spoken once. It's something that can only be said when it's reciprocated, and it's something that can only be said by men. So I kind of was mixing two different things here. That the whole patriarchal side of it, you know, because Ifunanya in Who Fears Death is an African, and specifically African concept. So, and I added the patriarchy to it because, you know, a lot of African cultures are highly patriarchal. So only men can speak it. And then I added a little feminist tweak to it, and then it said, oh yeah, and also, barren women can say it too. You have to be barren to say it. So I was purposely complicating the matter. So these are ways that you can do that in science fiction. You can enter conversations with concepts through the actual story, and that's what I love about science fiction. So the concept of Ifunanya in Who Fears Death is in conversation with the Western idea of love, the African idea of love, and the patriarchal side of it too. And so that's just one example of where I'm kind of addressing, I'm trying to show the African idea of love. And let me see. I think those are the main things that I want to touch on, because I can go on. I think this is just one example of where I'm doing this, because I do this in many different ways. Even in this one particular novel, where I'm looking at the concept of love and the concept of African love amongst both in from it. It's set in the future, but of course it's definitely linked to our present times. So I'll stop there. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. We're always so grateful to have a Greg Tate occasion. Greg Tate is currently a visiting professor in the Department of Africana Studies at Brown. From 1981 to 2005, he wrote for the Village Voice and also wrote for Vibe magazine from 94 to 2003. He's author of five books. Flyboy and the Buttermilk, Essays on Contemporary America, Brooklyn Kings, New York City's Black Fighters, Midnight Lightning, Jimi Hendrix and the Black Experience, Flyboy 2, The Greg Tate Reader, Writings from 81 to 2001, and James Brown's Body and the Revolution of the Mind, which is forthcoming. We're all looking forward to that, in 2013. He is also editor of Everything But the Burden, What White People Are Taking from Black Culture. So a warm welcome to Greg Tate.
Glad to be here. Charles, thank you for the invitation and for the, I would say, overly generous publication of interview in the most recent issue of Callaloo. And also like to say, I think you're something of a genius at social experimentation in convening this conference of unlikely suspects to talk about a subject as prone to sentimentality, as love. It reminds me of something Miles Davis said about the creation of Bitches Brew. He said, the only way you get anything new happening in music is you take the best musicians you can find and you make them play above what they know, beyond what they know. I said, okay, yeah. Because everybody here is as brilliant as they are, totally got put on the spot by having to address this topic. So I look at this as your bitches group. So, because Miles also told his musicians in the session, he said, yeah, the music is like the brewing, like we're like the bitches and they're stirring it up. So I want to read from what I thought were the two, a draw from the two most meaningful things I thought I'd ever written about the subject of love in my own work. They're actually from two dramatic pieces that short excerpts. The first one is from a play called My Darling Gremlin, which was first performed in 1993 at Aaron Davis Hall at City University, and later at the Kitchen 2 years later. And it's about three friends who are biking across America on a bicycle built for three from Oakland, from the Bay Area. And the three friends are Virgerie, who runs a counseling center for pregnant teenage moms or mothers-to-be, moms and mothers-to-be. And Sebastian, who I describe as a kind of Afrocentric New Age healer. And Mr. Danny Love, who is a lounge singer. And they've taken this trip because of their great love for Mr. Danny Love, who you find out is dying of an unspecified illness. Has been diagnosed as being terminal, and they decided this is going to be a last kind of hurrah road trip for their friendship. And because I'm somebody who tries not to go anywhere without a band, even if I have to create it on the spot, I have drawn into service to help read these works. First, for my darling gremlin, Aoife Bayezid. And Daphne Brooks. Who will read as, no, that's wrong. Let's say, okay, Daphne will read as Virgerie, the sister who runs the teen counseling, and Sebastian, and Aoife will read as Sebastian. And I will read Mr. Danny Love. And in my mind, I have the humbling task of reading as this character that was so magnificently brought to stage by a friend who's now deceased, Philip Hamilton. And the play is set in an abandoned nuclear testing site in Lovelock, Nevada, September 18, 2019. And Mr. Danny Love is, and all of their bike breaks down basically at this testing site. And so they just begin to have conversation while they figure out how they're going to continue on with the journey. But in fact, the journey is not meant to be continued on beyond this point, but only some of them know that. And it's at the lip of a nuclear bomb crater. I love looking into the abyss. I love it even more when the abyss swings back, giving you more love and more joy than age or time can ever destroy. My love will be so true, take about 100 lifetimes to wear it down, tear it down. My. What a majestic monument to man's powers of destruction. I once knew a boy whose face looked like that. One very tragic case of acne. We used to call him Jabba the Pit. Isn't it funny how being a victim doesn't render any of us incapable of being a victimizer? On the contrary, being a victim often makes us pine for some poor soul we can terrorize into unconditional love. I remember how my father reacted when he recognized that all 3 of his sons had grown up to be homosexual men. He didn't reject us, of course. No, he took it out on our mother, not in some crude physical manner. That wasn't his style. But the psychological torture he devised was so exquisitely malevolent. From that day on, he was only affectionate towards her when they were out in public among friends. At home, he became a wall of indifference. You don't know how much my mother loved to talk to that man. When we were growing up, the house resounded with the sound of their voices. They talked about opera, film, literature, faculty, roads, family gossip, you name it. At night, we'd sit up in our beds and listen to them go on for hours, sharing their minds with one another. Daddy knew he was denying her. More than his attention, it was the pleasure she derived from seeing herself reflected in his mind. I know how much that hurt. We still talk about it, my brothers and I. And we wonder if he ever realized how much he hurt himself, losing access to her mind and her music. What a fool. Thought he was poisoning her when he was really poisoning himself. Poisoning the same air he had to breathe, same as everybody else. How do you stop loving someone after 35 years?
Only men can do that. Stop loving somebody just because they're not in love with them anymore. Women are cursed when it comes to love. We can leave them, but we can never stop loving them. Not the ones we really love. Not even the ones we think we would be better off dead.
In my case, especially those.
Like, you ever see an ex of yours with this new piece, and they're doing all the things for them they could never get together to do for you? You could kill them, right?
I know that song. That's called Love Greenwich Jubilee Head.
Now, is that love talking, or is that your ego talking?
Honey, that is the sound of love unloading a Tech-9 clip on your ego at point-blank range. Last time it happened to me, I was like Daryl Hannah's death scene in Blade Runner. It was not pretty, and it was not cute.
Love will treat you like a faucet, turn you off and on. When you think your love is right there, baby, it's up and gone. So at this point in the play, Mr. Danny Love goes into a reverie, a monologue, a soliloquy, to a character that's described as a virtual dreadlock guitar man, and only he can see him. So you have to imagine the scene of the three of them, the broken bicycle, the bomb crater, and he begins speaking to this virtual character, who is an embodiment of something for him, but I think that'll come out in the text. You know, there's a few things I want you to know about me, love, before this gets too deep. This might come as a shock, but I used to walk on the wild side. I was out there searching for love just like ours and never found it because, hey, it wasn't ours. There's been an ocean of lovers between the tides of me and the shores of you. I know you wonder about my other lovers, wonder how you compare to them, and not only the ones I've told you about. Well, some were fascinating and cute, but they never smelled as good as you, baby. Ornette Coleman once said to me, have you ever smelled the music? There were others I haven't told you about, but see, I didn't fuck them all. It's not like I was promiscuous. I am a big flirt, but not a slut, you know? Truth is, I was always more in love with being in love than with love itself, you know what I mean? I knew that you would. I know. I mean, what's the point of life if you don't flirt with a little romance? Are you jealous, lover? Are you the jealous type? No reason you have to be. You being so seductive and all. I'm not the jealous type either. I'd probably be jealous if I saw you with some arts and crafts aboard. You got nothing to fear though, because lover, damn, you scampered down my secret cubby hole and taken up permanent residence there. You're closer to my heart than anyone's ever been. You know where my inner song dwells. You know just how I think music should taste on a man's breath. You know the winding path I want to see take up his hungry nostrils. Jimmy just wanted to fill you up. How did he put it? Music, sweet music, I wish I could caress you with my fingertips. Jimmy never smelled you though, did he? I like to be the first, but who knows, maybe you beat me there too. Maybe on the eve of his death, the muse took on fleshy scent too. Oh, fuck that, fuck, I got a lot of life left in me yet. When we took this trip, I wasn't looking to find love again by any stretch of the imagination. Not this kind of love anyway, so deep in the body. I mean, I know my girls love me, and I know they've never abandoned me to my fear of dying alone. But now I've got to abandon them, love, or leave them behind to accept your sweet embrace. You came along with your silent song, and you tempted me to madness. You came along and rescued me. I know the girls will probably try and lay a guilt trip on me. They're going to be so mad with me, I know it. But if they truly love me, they'll be as ecstatic as I am. If they love me madly. And if not, well, they'll just have to get over themselves and understand our love, my new love that dare not speak its name, my melodious and odoriferous virtual love. Yeah. So, thank you. Let me from a short second from a second piece, which is called the AECM versus the Revolutionary Chicken. And it's actually dialogue. The dialogue is actually taken from two speeches, one by Malcolm X, one by Martin Luther King. Martin's speech is a speech where he talks about the need for creative maladjustment. And the Malcolm speech is about sort of bullets. So what I've done is combine, given those two speeches, women characters, two women friends, to have with one another as a girlfriend conversation. And I've also invited Regina. You know. No.
Is it not numbered? Maybe shuffle. Just make sure. I think it's right.
going to be Manya 2X. And Regine is going to be Martine Luther Queen.
If you don't take an uncompromising stand, I don't mean go out and get violent.
At the same time, we should never be non-violent.
Unless you run into some non-violence.
I'm non-violent, those who are non-violent with me. But if you drop that violence on me,
Then you've got to make me go insane, and I'm not responsible for what I do.
now you're facing a situation where the young Negroes coming up
They don't want to hear that turn the other cheeks up now.
in Jacksonville, those were teenagers. They were throwing Molotov cocktails.
Negroes have never done that before.
I must say, this is concerning the great controversy
Over rifles and shotguns?
over rifles and shotguns. The only thing I've ever said is that in areas where the government has proven itself either unwilling or unable to defend the lives and property of Negroes, then it's
Time for Negroes to defend themselves. Article number 2 of the Constitutional Amendments provides you and me the right to own a rifle or a shotgun. It's constitutionally legal to own a shotgun or a rifle.
This doesn't mean you're going to get a rifle and form battalions and go out looking for white folks.
Although you'd be within your rights, I mean you'd be justified, but what would be illegal?
And we don't do anything illegal. How in the world can you love such people?
Well, let me rush on to say that when I speak of love, I'm not talking about some emotional bosh. I think in so many instances the whole idea is misunderstood.
It is absurd to urge oppressed people to love their oppressors in an affectionate sense.
There are certain things in our nation and in the world which I am proud to be maladjusted to. I say very honestly that I never intended to become adjusted to segregation and discrimination. I never intend to adjust myself to the madness of militarism, to the self-defeating effects of physical violence either.
So you let your dying be reciprocal.
This is what she means by equality.
What is good for the goose is good for the gander.
The Greek language talks about philia.
A sort of intimate affection between personal friends. This is significant love.
And on this level, you love people that you like, people that you have dealings with.
People that are friends, this is friendship.
Then the Greek language comes out with the word agape.
Agape is more than romantic or aesthetic love. Agape is more than friendship.
Agape is creative, understanding, redemptive goodwill for all men.
It is an overflowing love that seeks nothing in return.
Theologians would say that this is the God of love operating in the human heart. When one rises to love on this level, one loves every man.
When one rises to love on this level, she loves every man.
She rises to the point of loving the person who does the evil deed. Loving the person who does the evil deed while hating the deed that the person does. Yes, 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 I believe that this is the kind of love that can carry us through.
That can carry us through this period.
Carry us through this period of transition. Yes, believe.
Manga. Martine, you're trying to blind yourself to the historic development, everything that's taking place on this earth today. You'll see other things. Why will you see them? Because it's impossible for a chicken to produce a duck egg, even though they both belong to the same family of fowl. A chicken just doesn't have it within its system to produce a duck egg. And if ever a chicken did produce a duck egg, I'm certain you would say it is certainly a revolutionary chicken.
I know you would say it was a convinced that now there is a need for a new organization in our world. The International Association for the Advancement of Creative Maladjustment. Men and women who will be as maladjusted. Men and women who will be as maladjusted as the prophet Amos. Men and women who will be as maladjusted as the prophet Amos. Men and women who will be as maladjusted as the prophet Amos. And when you see them coming up with that kind of conspiracy, let them know your eyes are open. And let them know you got something else that's wide open too. And when you see them coming up with that kind of conspiracy, let them know your eyes are open. And let them know you got something else that's wide open too. And when you see them coming up with that kind of conspiracy, let them know your eyes are open. And let them know you got something else that's wide open too. And when you see them coming up with that kind of conspiracy, let them know your eyes are open. And let them know you got something else that's wide open too.
That was the highest poll meeting. Thank you.
Wonderful, wow. Okay, so. Next. Our respondent, we have, let's see, I'm sorry.
I think we've got found my path of genius.
We have 5 respondents on the panel, 3 of which have short formal responses, and 2 of which are going to help enliven the creative space of our Q&A. So the first speaker is going to be Gregory Jerome Hampton, who received his PhD in comparative lit from Duke. He has published articles in the English Journal, the CLAJ, Children's Literature and Education, Obsidian 3, and Callaloo. His most recent courses have been invested in the problematic of the black body and its portrayal in both literature and film, as well as literature across cultures, African, British, Native American, Caribbean, and Asian. His book, Changing Bodies in the Fiction of Octavia Butler, Slaves, Aliens, and Vampires, is the first monograph of literary criticism invested in examining the complete body of fiction produced by Octavia Butler. Other field of interest include 19th and 20th century African American and African American literature, as well as gender studies. Warm welcome to Professor Hampton.
Danny Love makes a reference, or he made a reference to miracles. Miracles were founded in 1955 in Detroit, Michigan, under the name Five Shines. The song he references is More Love. It was recorded in 1967 by Smokey Robinson and Miracles. One of Motown's most famous groups. The song More Love was one of Robinson's most personal compositions. He wrote it for his wife, Claudette Roger Robinson, who stopped touring with the Miracles in 1964 after a series of 8 miscarriages. He made a quote about this in the song, why he wrote it. Quote, after she had a miscarriage, Claudette would always tell me she was sorry she had let me down. I would explain that she had not let me down because she was there. She was alive. I wanted the babies, but I didn't know them. I wrote More Love to let her know how I felt about her, end quote. loss is relative. And despite the pain it may cause, it also tends to be very subjective in nature. Smokey and Claudette Robinson lost 8 children to miscarriages. Mr. Danny Love Sr. lost 3 sons to homosexuality. As a result, one man writes a song to honor the life of his wife, while another man chooses to use silence as a form of psychological torture against his wife. Silence is a powerful weapon in the war of love. But as Danny Love suggests, the oppressor must lower himself into the abyss of every act of oppression he inflicts. Love is blurry, and it blurs the vision of those in love. Love does not exist squarely in the realm of the real. How can it? Dr. Okorafor describes love as being very hybrid in nature. I'm in agreement with this assessment. Love is chthonic, existing in a space that transcends Western and Platonic thought. Love is several things at once. Love is joyous, love is painful. We nurture those we love, we hurt those we love. Love confuses and love clarifies. Consequently, love is necessarily the ingredient for any truly good story. Love is Eshu, Elegba, Nancy, Brer Rabbit, Coca Loki, Nike, and Hermes all rolled into one. Love is a trickster character that makes a story worth telling and the journey worth completing. Love is forever changing and always laughing at those who have been afflicted by its tenuous existence. Toni Morrison reminds us through Sula and the Peace, as well as through Surfer and Beloved, that love is dangerous and can only be considered safe when it is tethered upon the pages of a book. Dr. Okorafor's description of the love story in her novel, Who Fears Death, is vaguely reminiscent of the love story told in Octavia Butler's Wild Seed novel. The love between Anyanu and Adoro is not rooted in romance and does not come easily. Like the two characters in Okorafor's novel, Doro and Anyanu are destined for one another despite themselves. In many respects, they are opposite sides of the same coin. At times, it is difficult to define their relationship as love or loving because, and despite the fact that they constantly attempt to hurt, control, and to change one another. Brother would say, all that you touch, you change. All that you changes you. The borders of love and hate are crossed often because love is a borderless space that necessitates pain and pleasure as a constant state of being. Love is dangerous because it makes mortals susceptible to various states of delusion. Only when a person accepts the notion that love is a boundless and inconsistent frontier will they be truly prepared to embark upon and enjoy the stories of love despite its genres.
Our next respondent is Imani Perry, and I'm so sad to report that she's not able to make it today. Professor Perry, beloved presence here at Princeton, is an interdisciplinary scholar who studies race and African American culture using the tools provided by various disciplines, including law, literary and cultural studies, music, and the social sciences. She has published numerous articles in areas of those fields, many of which are available for download at imaniperry.typepad.com. She also wrote the notes and introductions to the Barnes and Nobles is my family, that's my family, was it? Classics editions of the Narrative of Sojourner Truth. Professor Perry teaches interdisciplinary courses that train students to use multiple methodologies to investigate African American experience and culture. And Professor Perry said her remarks, and they're short, and I'm going to do my best. I cannot even begin to approximate the incredible technique of the cold readings that we just heard, but I will certainly give it a try. I'll try, okay. This is Professor Perry's words. Quote, "Let me begin by offering my apologies for not being there, but I am there in spirit. Greg and Nettie are both writers whose work I am inspired and compelled by, so I appreciate this opportunity to offer a modest response. When I was 13, we listened to the song Computer Love in all the cities I had a home in. Birmingham, Chicago, and Cambridge. Shirley Murdoch wailed, Charlie Wilson seduced, and Roger Troutman's homemade voice box prophesied the digital courtship of today. Who knows this song? Can we get the chorus, the shooby-dooby-doo-wop? One more time. Beautiful. Always collaborative work here at the Callaloo Conference. In her fiction, Nedi makes magic of a traditional Kanseribo love, Ifunanya. Ifunanya, no?
Yeah.
Speculative fiction, by definition, remakes and remixes and therefore allows that kind of thing. And undoubtedly part of the speculation is that this art might not be so much stretching the truth, but telling it figuratively and outside of bounds, and therefore perhaps better. She reminds us of this in the piece. Science fiction is very much the stuff of our daily worlds remixed and rewoven. Homemade love is thick. It isn't quaint at all. It is vast. The daddy in the first portion of Greg's love story descends, bitter at the realized possibilities of expansive love in his sons. The parental chatter talking about opera, literature, film, the mundane and the grand, according to the father, has opened up too much heart in the home created with his wife. He has sons who are gay and he knows it, so daddy makes silence fall. Only men can do that, she says. Stop loving someone when you are no longer in love. Love is walking with the ever-present prospect of quicksand, sucking everything you know, turning your world inside out. A risky proposition filled with losses as well as gains. The stories about it are like so many homemade voice boxes. They cannot explain it by simply telling it to you straight. That intoxication, the dopamine, the devastation, demands something more by way of explanation. And so we turn to speculation, poetry, music, assemblage, from everything we got, for an answer, moving past logic into the frightening possibility. Just something she sent along this morning. Beautiful, beautiful work. Thank you, Professor Perry in absentia. For our final formal respondent, I don't have the occasion of saying this often, but it is with great excitement and a little bit of relief, quite truthfully, that I can say that Quisqueya is in the house here at Princeton. Nelly Rosario is an assistant professor of English at Texas State University of San Marcos. Rosario, a writer of fiction and nonfiction, was born in the DR and raised in Brooklyn, New York. She received, and this is something I often tell my students and they get very excited by. She got her BA in engineering from MIT and then an MFA from Columbia University. She has received numerous awards, including a '99 Barbara Deming Memorial Fund Fellowship, the Bronx Writers Center Van Leer Literary Fellowship for '99-2000, 2 National Arts Club Writing Fellowships, the '97 Hurston Wright Award in Fiction, and the '88 National Teachers in English Writing Award. She was named Writer on the Verge by the Village Voice Literary Supplement in 2001. Her debut novel, Song of the Water Saints, which traces the lives of 3 generations of Dominican women, won a PEN Open Book Award in 2002. She's currently at work on her 2nd novel. And Rosario has much to teach us of not only love beyond the borders, but as love happening on the difficult and everyday love that happens on borders themselves. So welcome, Professor Rosario.
Thank you. That was really beautiful. Thank you so much, Alexandra. I just want to thank everyone. It's just amazing to me the act of love that it's taken for everyone to sort of converge here. And also the kind of continuation of sort of seeing this whole trajectory since New Orleans, Ethiopia, St. Louis, and just sort of how the conversation evolves. And so one of the things about love that I'm really struck by in this conference is this idea of everyone here who's presented and everyone who, we all bring this incredible love of the craft, whatever it is we do. And I think that's also worth talking about, not just love of people, but also love of ideas, love of thought. The fact that working